I'm watching Jackie Brown this morning. Usually every summer I marathon the Tarantino movies, especially when I'm starting a new writing project. I'm starting a new novel. And his movies are always an endless source of inspiration. And the amazing thing about his movies is that a lot of times you watch them again, especially ones you don't watch all the time. Like Jackie Brown is not one I watch as much as, say, Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. But you do watch it every now and then, and you realize, especially as I've gotten older, this is a movie that's really, really just works on you in a different way than a lot of his other stuff. And I really love the performances. I love that it's like a big hangout movie. There isn't any big plot or story. It's just these characters, and you get to know them. So, Tarantino Fest has been interesting this year. I've actually done something different. I've been watching even movies he was involved with or ones that he's disowned, like Natural Born Killers. I'm watching them in order. I watched Reservoir Dogs, then I watched True Romance, Natural Born Killers, Pulp Fiction, Four Rooms, From Dusk Till Dawn, and then this morning I watched Jackie Brown. He wrote From Dusk Till Dawn. I watched Jackie Brown this morning, and I'm kind of gearing myself up. I got to see when I have a chance to sit down and watch the complete Kill Bill, which is a long day. That's about 4 hours and 10 minutes of movie. And it's totally worth it. I've done it before. It's been a while since I've done it, but that's definitely a great, great experience. Then I'm going to move on to, Death Proof and Glorious Bastards, Hateful Eight, and then finally Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a movie that I loved immediately. And I realize now that that's a movie that split a lot of people. A lot of people did not care for that movie. But that one I really, really seem to dig. But this is mostly movies. We're here to mostly talk about movies mostly. I'm Dan Siri. And first we're going to start with The Acolyte. This is the new Star Wars show that's been on Disney Plus. Yeah, the reviews online, people hate it. Just nobody likes this show, nobody. And the problem is with Star Wars lately is lack of quality control. Um, there's too many projects. There's too many of these little animated shows with Dave Filoni, boring, boring stuff. It's all Star Wars dogma. It's all the ins and outs, and this little character that you saw for 2 seconds in the Clone Wars or the Attack of the Clones or something. We're gonna do a whole thing focusing on her, and it's boring. It's really dumb. The company has no direction. Kathleen Kennedy doesn't know what she's doing. She's really trying to fit that square peg into that round hole for about a decade now, and has not been fired. I just can't believe it. I mean, usually, I guess they're still living off of the laurels of the first couple of movies they made because they had about 3 hits in a row with Force Awakens and all that other stuff. Rogue One and Last Jedi was a hit when it came out. Rise of Skywalker, not so much, but it still made a lot of money worldwide back in the days when anything could make $1 billion. But I think people have just gotten tired of it. And again, they keep ruining it. And this is the problem with a lot of the recent live action shows. Like Obi-Wan and Boba had their moments. The Mandalorian was great until that third season, which I believe was done out of protest. I think Favreau purposely did a crappy job because he just wanted out. Just wanted to get out of there. Uh, Nobody's interested in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. Nobody. The Ahsoka show was boring. People don't realize something about Grand Admiral Thrawn. They think he's such a great villain, but they're just remembering when they read Heir to the Empire in 1991. He has not been that impressive in any of the Disney incarnations, whether it be on Rebels or anywhere else. He's just this boring blue guy that stands around and does nothing. Ahsoka, I think I actually like Acolyte a little bit more than Ahsoka. Ahsoka was one Star Wars show that I really, really didn't like. I felt like it was just flat. It had nothing to say. It had characters surviving wounds that should have killed them, like especially Sabine. And the greatest injustice in that whole show, because I was a fan of Rebels, relatively, I watched it and I liked it. I'm not going to go back and rewatch it. But I felt like it was ridiculous that Sabine would go all the way across the galaxy just for a friend. Because in Star Wars now, there's no passion, there's no love, there's no romance, there's no tension of any kind. And all the relationships seem to be very subdued. And it's just boring to me. Like Sabine, when she saw that guy from Rebels, Ezra, she should have just kissed him. She should have done that. But God forbid the characters in Star Wars can have any kind of attraction like that. It's just very passionless and it's dead. There was some good fights in the Acolyte. Some of the acting was pretty good, but again, the problem with a lot of these Star Wars shows and movies is they give you little bits of awesome and then there's hours of dead air. And I know everybody keeps telling me watch Andor, watch Andor. I did watch about 5 episodes, and to be honest with you, it's too British. Star Wars is not a British thing. It's a cross between a samurai film, 1930s movie serials with hyper-realized acting and staging, and it's a Western, basically. And those are three genres that the Brits, they'll try to do, but they just don't get it. They don't understand American 1930s B movies. They don't do samurai movies, and they don't really do westerns. Westerns are our thing, or the Italians. That's about it. A couple of other people can try, and a few people can pull it off, but that's why Star Wars is uniquely a pretty American vision. And when it comes to the creators, this is the problem too. Your writers are young people. These are people that did not grow up reading books except what their English teachers assigned, and whatever was popular at the moment. Like, they didn't seek out great books and great literature. They didn't even watch well-written movies. Your kids today that are going to film school, they're not watching anything from the 70s. The 70s would be like the equivalent of me watching a whole bunch of silent movies. That's 50 years old. It's old to them. They don't want anything to do with The Godfather or Chinatown or any of those other movies. French Connection, forget it. They don't want anything to do with those movies. They don't get it. And again, with Star Wars, you need to get geeks that really understand the stuff, that really know what they're doing. Don't let the kids run the store, because that's what ruined Marvel. That's what ruined almost everything from Disney. Yes, there was these are spoilers, two cool cameos at the end, Darth Plagueis, apparently, and Yoda, but too little too late. You can't give us one moment. That's what Dave Filoni does. That's the Filoni shuffle, and unfortunately, all of Star Wars wants to be like him, and I really don't know why, because the guy really isn't that good. For every good idea, there's so much time that's wasted. Like, the Clone Wars didn't need to be 6 seasons and then they made a 7th season. It could have been done in like 3 or 4. They could have told that whole story, and it just dragged on forever and ever. And it's like, some of it's great, yes, but come on, let's get to it. Why do we need so much? And I think what they really need to do is cut the fat off and get right to the point. And no more of the Star Wars dogma, no more of this and that and the other thing. Just get to it. Just do it. So, horns down for the Acolyte. It was very boring. I don't think there's going to be a 2nd season. And the thing is, there shouldn't be a 2nd season, and then they're going to blame us. They're going to say, oh, it's all those toxic Star Wars fans, and that's why we don't have a 2nd season. No, you don't have a 2nd season because your 1st season sucked. And you need to get it right the first time. Imagine like a show like 24. Okay, let's talk about like a great show when it was first on. Not like the season 7 and 8, but like those first couple of years of 24. They were right up front. They were just doing the great stuff very early on, because they had to hook people in. They had to make sure you came back to watch next week. A lot of these other shows, it's like, well, we'll start off slowly and then we'll get going in the 3rd season. No, get going now. Get going in season 1. We don't want to waste our time. Breaking Bad didn't wait, or The Sopranos, or any of the great shows of television. I mean, they didn't wait to get good. They didn't have any warm up. They just bang right out of the gates. And that's what Star Wars needs. And I'm not getting that vibe from Skeleton Crew. I don't think that's going to be worth anything. And all these Star Wars movies and projects are going to keep getting delayed, like they were supposed to make a Rey movie. And I would honestly like to see a Rey movie if it was directed by a guy who looked like me. Okay? Middle-aged nerds who saw Star Wars a billion times. That's who you get. You don't get somebody that just made a documentary last week, because they don't get it. I've seen interviews with that woman that's directing the Rey movie, that's interested in the Rey movie, and there's nothing that tells me she belongs anywhere near a Star Wars movie. She could do more documentaries, she could do some feature films, but Star Wars is a completely different animal. And I don't know, I just think they're just letting the wrong people do these things, and then when they fail, they blame the fans. No, why don't you make a great movie? And letting Dave Filoni direct the Mandalorian movie is not a good idea. He's a TV guy. He does not understand. He won't understand what to do with a 2-hour story. He won't make a compelling film. It's going to be stupid. It's going to be just as bad as Mandalorian Season 3, if not worse. Okay. Now let's move on to something truly great. This was a movie that I loved this year. It's probably my favorite movie so far this year. I haven't seen much, but this is George Miller's Furiosa. Now, this is a great movie. This is not Fury Road at all. This is a very different kind of movie. This is more of a Sergio Leone journey through this wasteland, through this Western landscape. And I thought it was a really amazing movie. I mean, again, a little long, a little casually paced. I mean, you're not watching a movie today with all the whiz bang, quick edits and things like that. This was more like a movie from the 70s or from the early 80s. This is a movie that really takes its time and really has a great character and really explores who she is. And the actresses they got, Anya Taylor-Joy is great as always. She's really amazing in this movie. But the younger actress that played her as a young woman was very good too. This is a great example. And unfortunately, a lot of people online are thinking, oh, it's another girl boss movie. No, no, no. This is not Disney. This is not that garbage. It's all earned. She goes on a journey as a character. Any success she has as a character, any adventure she has as a character is all earned. It's not just gifted to her like Rey. Like she just really, works to. She really pays her dues to get where she is, and it's a great movie. It's definitely amazing to see. And again, when Anya Taylor-Joy, everybody's saying she didn't have a lot of dialogue. She didn't have a lot of dialogue. No, it's not about dialogue. It's her eyes. It's her expressions, facial expressions. That's what tells you everything. It's her actions that tell you what she's saying. She doesn't need to just go off and do these big long monologues. And it's definitely nothing like there that I've seen this year. So definitely big horns up for Furiosa. Now we're going to get on to one that a lot of people loved, but I thought it was a huge disappointment. This is Dune Part 2. Now, I was not a big fan of Dune Part 1. To me, and the Sci-Fi Channel version, and the Lynch one has its problems, but as bad as the Lynch version is, as people think it is, I don't think it's bad. Especially if you find the extended cut on YouTube from Spice Diver, which is incredible. It's the best film version of Dune I've ever seen so far. It's a recut of Dune using all the footage from the Lynch version that was lost, and it's reintegrated and fantastic. The first one I thought was pretty good, and I kind of liked where it was leading, although it was a little uneven. The rhythm was off. But this second part was a tremendous letdown, especially the ending, because it's more in line with the awful Dune sequel books. The original Dune is a great book. It's a fantastic book. Frank Herbert is a great writer. I'll lead with that. He's a great writer, but he only had one story. Because if you look at the other five Dune books, I only read two of them. I read Dune Messiah, and I read Children of Dune recently, and they were absolutely awful. You see that even though this guy's a great writer, he only had one story to tell, and all the other ones are a complete waste of time. And I didn't like the fact that the only book that's not tarnished by the awfulness of the Dune sequels is the original Dune, because it has a beautiful ending. It has a happy ending. It's a little bittersweet because he has to marry the princess to become the emperor, and Chani is really the woman he loves. So it is a little bittersweet towards the end, but it is a great, great book. And you read the sequels and you're like, all right, Herbert was doing too many mushrooms. because this really, really sucks. But you can tell it's from a genius mind. Like, hacks don't go that far. This guy really, really blew it. And then they basically brought in the horrible nature of the sequels is brought into the first Dune movie, where he basically instantly becomes a tyrant. And it's not like he becomes a tyrant over the course of a couple of years like the books. No, he's instantly a tyrant, and he's instantly murdering people, and it's a jihad. And I'm telling you, with everything that's going on in the world right now, that's the last damn thing we need to see in a movie. So major horns down for Dune 2, a piece of garbage. Go on YouTube, watch the Spice Diver cut of the David Lynch Dune, and it's incredible. Or better yet, go to the library and read the first book. It won't disappoint you. So the next one we're going to be looking at is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. We're playing catch up, guys, because I've missed you and I haven't been able to, do one of these videos in a while. I've been very busy with my book Lost on a Wave, which is finished, but I just got an idea for some more stuff the other day, and I'm like, oof, I got to put that in there before I send it to copyright. It's going to go to the U.S. government soon with a little stamp on it, the little C with the year, and hopefully it'll be in bookstores very soon. I'm already started my new book, so I'm really like, well, I got to finish this book. I thought it was finished, but it's not quite finished. The next movie we're going to is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now, okay, I'll be right up front. It's not as good as Afterlife, but it's just what it needs to be. Fun. It isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not trying to break new ground. It's more of a hangout Ghostbusters movie. And the villain and all that, it's all an afterthought. It's basically like a big episode of the real Ghostbusters. It's a little slow. Some of the humor really falls flat, but overall, it's just a nice addition to the series. And this is a series with a very strange trajectory. Yes, that's the air conditioning kicking in, and I could do nothing about it. Sorry. You watch the first movie in 1984 when Slimer flies out towards the screen. You're like, great, we're going to have a Ghostbusters 2 within a year or so. Nope. We had to wait 5 years, and the second one was a big disappointment because it was pretty much a retread of the original. There was cartoons, there was comics afterwards, but everybody wanted a third Ghostbusters. Scripts kicked around for years. One of them even became the Ivan Reitman film Evolution, which, don't watch it, it's not good. But the closest thing to a sequel was the video game from 2009, the multi-platform video game from 2009. And that was a lot of fun. That was really good. And that to me was like the third movie. And I'm like, you know what? We don't need another movie. This is a perfect, like that Back to the Future video game was, I consider that the fourth movie. The one that they did for PlayStation 3 some time ago. Then they came out with the remake in 2016, which I was, not mean about it, but I just didn't care to see it. As a matter of fact, Movies Anywhere gave it to me for free because I'm such a good customer. And I've had the thing for about 6 years and I haven't watched it yet. I just don't care. It just doesn't, to me it's just boring. And then, but Sony is very smart. They wised up, unlike Disney, who keeps digging their woke mass grave each day. They decided, let's make a true sequel to Ghostbusters with Afterlife. And it has a really good story. It's got a charming cast. The second half sort of apes the original film. But let me tell you, as much as a ripoff it is in the second half of the first movie, it rips off the first movie a lot in that second half. When the original squad shows up at the end, you guys know what I'm talking about. It was some of the ugliest geek tears I ever cried. I was just a complete wreck when I saw the boys back because I didn't know that was coming. I had an idea and I was hoping, but I'm like, here it is. And it gave us the ending that we all wanted for Force Awakens. Like when Kylo Ren goes to get Han Solo, we all wish that it was blocked by a green lightsaber with Luke Skywalker because that would have been a good movie, if these people had common sense. And it's too funny. It's so funny when people say that about Force Awakens. Well, if you had Luke Skywalker show up to save Han Solo, it just would have been the same old thing. Have you seen The Force Awakens? It is the same old thing. It's basically a remake of A New Hope, more or less. which is totally fine by me. You know, John Carney keeps making the same music film every couple of years, and I'm there with a bucket of popcorn ready to watch another version of Once over and over again, like Begin Again or Sing Street. Keep doing that. I love it. It's a formula that I love. Do it. Um, but, you know, Frozen Empire doesn't do the heavy lifting of Afterlife because it doesn't have to. And it doesn't try to subvert your expectations because it doesn't want to. It just wants to have a good time at the movies. And it is. So, horns up for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I forgot the name. That's how frivolous this movie is. But I loved it. It was a lot of fun. But, you know, again, it's not going to change your life, but it's fun. So from the vault, we have The Breakfast Club. This is the one I saw recently. The Criterion sale is on, and once again, another summer that I'm broke and I'm not buying any Criterions this summer. Although my wife is going to get me a couple for my birthday coming up in August. God bless you, caller. You really are the greatest. And then I'll be a hypocrite because I'll be trying to do another I'm not buying Criterions this summer video. Basically, The Breakfast Club is a movie that I've gone on a journey with. You know, I first saw it when I was in high school myself. And you relate to it on that level when you're a kid. Then when you're an adult, you watch it again. And you still feel a lot of sympathy and a lot of empathy for the kids. But you kind of know, like, what is the world really going to be like? What kind of a world are these kids going to grow into? And the cynical side of you says, well, none of them are going to be happy as adults. They, you know, if she ends up with Bender, it's not going to go right. And if he ends up with her, it's not going to go right. But, you know, Hughes doesn't really, he doesn't make predictions. He doesn't ask you to pass judgment. What John Hughes does in a lot of ways is he presents these young people in the world that they live in. And he gives you a sense that, well, I have to believe that these people are going to be all right. I have to believe that Bender's going to turn himself around and you know, and all these things are going to change. I mean, there is a little bit of conformity in his movies towards the end, but they're a lot of fun. They're entertaining movies. And, you know, you're always wondering, it gives you something to think about after you've seen the movie. Like, which way will they turn out? Because I don't think Hughes was ever a cynical filmmaker. I think he always wants you to hold out hope that these guys are going to be okay and that somehow they're all going to, you know, to be all right. He really is, I think he's an underrated genius of cinema, John Hughes. And I think what was great is he originally shot a lot more scenes. When you go on the DVD and you look at all the deleted scenes that were originally going to be shot for this movie that he didn't end up using, it was very interesting that the problem we have in a lot of movies today is that movies run too long because the editors don't know when to stop and they just want to include everything. But what was great about Hughes is that he used to make much longer movies. Like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was originally a lot longer, and he cut that down a great deal. But that's something that people gotta understand, that a movie needs to be short. It's basically a short story. It's not supposed to be this novel approach, you know, to movies. And basically, there was not a lot of fantasy films in the 80s, but I consider a lot of the John Hughes comedies with the young people to be like fantasy films. You know, it's like 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, and I love Some Kind of Wonderful, which he didn't direct that or Pretty in Pink. They're basically the same story. I think Some Kind of Wonderful is actually better than Pretty in Pink. And again, you know, it appears sometimes that at the end of the movie, are the characters selling out? Or are they just conforming to society? No, at the end of the day, they're just kids, and they're confused, and they're trying something new. They're trying a different way to live, a different way of life, you know? And then it's always up for debate. Is it going to work or is it not going to work? But this movie is still, even years later, because we're coming on almost 40 years. Next year will be the 40th anniversary of this movie. And I'm thinking to myself, that's like two 20-year reunions. Like, these kids are old now. They're not kids anymore. But it's amazing that as far as teen movies from the 80s go, how well his films hold up. So that's definitely a good one to see. There's some great features on there, commentary. If you are buying Criterions this month, you know, uh, can't do can't do worse than Breakfast Club. It's a good movie, a solid film. Now we're on to cross the streams. We're going to talk about two movies on streaming. First on Tubi. Again, if you want your Criterion fix, actually three movies. If you want your Criterion fix, you can check out the movie Something Wild with Ray Liotta and Melanie Griffith on Tubi. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but I remember being very impressed with this movie when I had seen it some time ago. One of those interesting 80s crime movies that they really are in a class by themselves, you know? They don't really make them like that anymore. What I was impressed with on Tubi was a thing called Robodoc, which I thought was one episode. Then I realized there's 3 more hours of it. So it was a great 4 hour long documentary about the making of RoboCop, which is a movie that, you know, I hold near and dear to my heart. It's a great film. And the stories, the anecdotes, and I knew quite a bit about RoboCop because I pretty much bought every DVD release, including the Criterion Collection back in 2000 and maybe 99. It might have been 99. I remember paying like $40 for it. It was insane. But I had to. It was RoboCop. It was the first time I'd ever seen the uncut version because I had always watched it on VHS, like the R-rated version, and that was like a big deal. And then a couple of years later, me and Danny Gator showed it in the film club at the College of Staten Island, the prestigious College of Staten Island. And that was great because we had a lot of people coming to see the movie, and they automatically recognized Kurtwood Smith because they knew him from the '70s show. But when they saw him in RoboCop, they saw a very different side to him, and it blew a lot of people's minds. So that was great. Whenever you can surprise people like that in a movie, it's great. Even if you're not a fan of RoboCop, I would still check it out. There's a lot of interesting information on there. It's definitely worth checking out. You know, a lot of stuff. You know, well, no, don't watch it if you're not a fan. Watch RoboCop first, and then watch the documentary. You could skip RoboCop 2. I finally had just seen it. I had never watched RoboCop 2 before. It was also on, I think it was on Hulu or Tubi or one of them. And I'm like, oh, I never saw RoboCop 2. And I saw it, and I'm like, God, this is so bad. The original is a masterpiece, but RoboCop 2 is awful, and the sequels are even worse. So don't bother. Another one that I thought was interesting, this is on Shudder, was called Late Night with the Devil. Again, there's been a lot of horror movies this year. I've missed a lot of them. I have to catch up with so many movies. But I really, really dug this movie. It's not one for everybody, but if you like classic TV, especially late night TV and horror movies, I think you'll get a kick out of it. The cast is really great. The design, the rhythm of the movie is really good. A lot of people disagree, but I think the ending is great. The cast is really impressive. Dave Dastmalchian, I think he should get a nomination for Best Actor for this movie, and I know that's going a bit far, but I really liked his performance in this, which is on Shudder. Definitely check it out. It's really interesting. It has a real '70s vibe to it, and I think a lot of people are going to miss the point on this movie, but I really dug it, and I definitely want to see more movies. I still haven't seen a whole bunch, and there will be upcoming videos soon for the best of '84 and the best of '94, so stay tuned for those. And this is Dan Series signing off.